What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to specifically address the remote work crisis. I want to talk about the potential of multiple crashes coming very soon, and I want to give you the information that nobody else is telling you right now. Before we jump into this video, first, all I ask is you go ahead, hit that like button. It really does help out the channel, and it just shows me that you are interested in this type of content. But let's get into the video. First, do you know of anybody that works from home? Do you specifically work from home, or would you like to? Well, many people right now say they would rather work from home than to go into an office, even if they're getting paid more money to go into work. Well, I want to break down some statistics, and some of these are very interesting. But here's what we know. In a recent study, it says that the United States has more than 4.7 million people who work remotely at least 50% of the time. Also, 16% of companies say they will only hire remote workers. Globally, companies are 16% fully remote. Now, in August alone, 30.2% of all job postings on LinkedIn were for remote positions. Now, that number is pretty much stable over the past few months. Here's what else we know. During the height of the pandemic, more than 70% of full-time workers were working from home. Also, before the pandemic, roughly 2.8% of all full-time workers were working remotely. So, before the pandemic, 2.8%. During the height of the pandemic, about 70%. That's roughly a 68% jump. 68%, that is huge. Now, right now, meetings are taking place almost 50% of the time over video calls. We also know 20% of companies are willing to pay for home office equipment and furnishings in order to fully equip somebody's work environment. So they will pay 100% of the cost right now. That's big. And that's 20% of companies are willing to do this. Now, here's a very scary statistic. Roughly 40% of people working from home say they would take a significant pay cut in order to continue working from home for their safety and their well-being. So, what does this mean to you? When are we going to see this crisis coming? And what are the multiple crashes that we're going to see? Let's address that. I want to break this down into different categories. We're going to talk about shopping locally. We're going to talk about cost, turnover, and location. And here's how this is going to break down. Currently, shopping locally, how does this impact us when it comes to working remotely? Here's what we know. Shopping for specific items. Let's say you want to go into like a pet store. Well, if you want to go into a pet store, great. Well, what if that pet store decided to work and pretty much sell all e-commerce, all online, all their workers working from home, nobody in a store? So how do you plan on buying that specific sweater for your dog? Buy that specific cat food for your cat? Buy a leash for your lizard? How do you do that? You don't locally. You'd have to do it online. With more people working from home, shopping online would actually be the new normal. And when I say new normal, it has been the new normal for years, but it would only get faster. It would only accelerate. More people will turn to online shopping, which could hurt local economies. When local economies are hurt, guess what happens? Well, their real estate prices go down. People get laid off. They get furloughed. They leave, right? And so those economies get hurt. And it's very hard to get an economy to bounce back, especially if everybody leaves. Here's the second thing, costs. What I can tell you is costs would actually drop significantly if more people worked from home. Because when you work from home, you don't have the expenses of an office building. You don't have as much insurance and liability, right? You don't have some of these things. You don't have the just regular upkeep that you have to have running an office building, whether it's let's say a water dispenser, right? Kleenex, toilet paper. You don't need this stuff because nobody's working in the office building. So when your expenses as a business decline, your profits normally increase. Well, when your expenses decline, the cost in many cases for your product or service decreases as well. Okay, but you are more profitable. So it's a win-win for the customer and for the business. Now, people would most likely buy more online if the prices dropped. If your prices dropped, you'd probably get more customers to buy your service or your product. It's just the way things are. Let's talk about turnover. Management has said for the past year or so that workers who work remotely are easier to replace than on-site workers. They also feel that they don't have that connection. They don't have that that familiarity with them. They're not considered friends. They're coworkers. So because of that, they'd be easier to let go. They also say that remote workers tend to have they tend not to have the same skill set as on-site workers. And if that's the case, some will actually get less pay. So in many cases, when you work from home, you actually get paid less. You can potentially work less hours as well. So in many cases, workers who are working from home will actually bring home less money. But their expenses also decrease as well, and I'll address that in a minute. Let's talk about location though. Working from home allows employees to move away from bigger cities. What we saw during the height of the pandemic is people moved out of Seattle, people moved out of New York, people moved out of San Francisco and Los Angeles, right? They went to cheaper areas. They went to places that were better for bringing up a family. They could buy more for the money that they were getting by selling their home in the city. They could pretty much buy the exact same property, exact size, everything for half the cost in the suburbs. So what happened then? The cost of homes and apartments in those smaller cities, those urban areas, went up. But in the big cities, prices actually came down. Now, what I can tell you is that if this happens and we see everybody transition from the big cities to the smaller ones, that's going to negatively impact the larger cities. Seattle, Portland, New York, Los Angeles, Miami. It's going to become an issue. But here's where things get very interesting. With the recent scare of the new heavily mutated COVID variant, Omicron, what I can tell you is more businesses are going to look to hire remote workers because this recent scare has got many people considering the fact that what if our business gets shut down? What if somebody tests positive and every single worker has to go in quarantine, stay home, and then come back and test negative after 5 to 7 days before they can even come back to work? That's if they are vaccinated. Well, more businesses are going to look to hire remote workers, but this is potentially going to cause people's income to drop. But this also means expenses are going to drop as well because you do not have to pay for fuel. You don't have to pay for as much transportation. You could potentially sell your vehicle. Let's say you have 2 or 3 vehicles for your family. You and your spouse have a vehicle each. Maybe you only need 1. So that would allow you to sell the other vehicle, either get out of a payment or put some money into your bank account. Okay? Now, here's where we could see more major changes. One of the major changes that we're going to see is we're going to see the US is going to be more productive. Keyword, productive. Doesn't mean we're going to make more products. It doesn't mean we're going to get more things created, right? But we're going to be more productive. We're going to be more efficient. We're going to be more effective with our time. Now, this is going to make businesses more profitable. We also know we're going to see a major shift in our economy very soon. Once this does happen, once the remote worker, that narrative, that idea takes hold and sticks. Again, we went up to 70% in the height of the pandemic and then we came back down. But the expectation is more people are going to go remote. More businesses are going to go remote. What I can tell you is as businesses move away from the typical work environment, right? You come in, let's say 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, you check out at 5, right? 5 days a week, 9 to 5, you do it every single week, right? Have a couple weeks off during the year, so you'll get the holidays off, and that's about it. Get paid by the hour. What I can tell you, as people start to move away from that, we're going to see increased profits, which will turn into increased wages. In the meantime, wages could fall, but as we get more profits from the businesses, wages will increase. As wages increase, chances are we're going to see our economy start booming as well. When I say start booming, I mean even more. Now, when we see a booming economy, we see increased wages, we're going to see additional inflation, even higher than what we're seeing right now, unless we see the Federal Reserve step in and slow it down, which they are expected to do very soon. With additional inflation, though, here's what I can tell you. It's going to hurt the lower income earners and the middle income earners the most. Just check this out. Keep this in mind. I'm going to give you a list of a handful of different industries and areas where the lowest income earners are normally working. This includes waiters and waitresses, fast food workers. This includes maids and housekeepers, home healthcare aides, childcare workers, automotive technicians, and even bartenders. These are some of the lower income areas right now. But in larger cities, these workers typically do okay. But consider what would happen if these larger cities started to lose a lot of their residents, a lot of their customers, their regulars. They didn't have somebody to clean their home all the time. The restaurants were bare and empty. Bars didn't have many people there on Friday and Saturday nights. Guess what happens? As residents move away, these workers would either lose hours, they would lose their job, okay? It would be very difficult for them to pay their rent and their bills, or more businesses will turn to remote work. So, when all these remote workers move away from the bigger cities, we are going to see it's going to be more expensive in the suburbs. It's going to be less expensive in the cities. We're going to see a huge transition, which we saw during the pandemic. However, if we see this new COVID variant take hold, and it is deadlier and it moves quicker than the Delta COVID variant, chances are we could see a huge shift. We could go back to what the things were like during the pandemic. Remote work during the pandemic, 70% of full-time workers working from home. If this happens, we're going to see a major shift. We're going to see multiple crises happen at the same time. Housing, financial, right? We're going to see an employment crisis. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening. But again, just understand, this, according to many experts, is the transition that we need to get to that next step. We need to get out of the old way of thinking, the old work environment, and we have to go remote. So that's what we know at this time, that there's a lot of studies, there's a lot of different research going into the potential remote work crisis or crash. Some are saying that remote work is going to completely crash. Nobody's going to be working from home. But there's also multiple studies that say remote work is only going to skyrocket. More people are going to be working from home simply because they're either worried about their health and safety, they know it's less expensive for them, and they can actually retain more money by working from home, even if they get paid less, and their location freedom. They can work from almost anywhere in the world, whether it's in the United States, they go to Mexico, they go to the UK, doesn't matter. They can work from anywhere in the world, which could potentially cause a housing market crash here in the United States, or things could actually go up. So again, there's multiple different crises happening. It just depends, how is this going to ultimately play out? And that is what we don't know at this time. But as I know more, I promise I'll come back on and share more. All I want you to do, if you enjoyed today's video and you enjoyed this content, go ahead, hit that like button. It really does help out the channel. Also, consider subscribing so you never miss an update. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.